Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Dippo Joseph Coker, Product Marketing Manager at MadCap Software. I'm going to be your host for today, and I'll be introducing our presenters, handling logistics, and the QA at the end of the webinar. Today, in episode 2 of our series, Preparing for AI, we're joined by CEO of MadCap Software, Anthony Olivier, and Director of Product Management, Jim Washbush. Just before we start, though, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping, just get you used to our interface here on On24. First of all, please note that we are recording the session, so if you don't make it to the end, you will receive a link to the recording. At the end of the webinar, we have a Q&A session. Feel free to type your questions into the question panel throughout the webinar, and we'll be sure to share them at the end with all of you. If we run out of time, we'll take any questions that are left over, and we'll make sure that we send you a personalized email with a reply to your question. Before we get started, let me take you around the On24 interface. You're currently watching us through the media player. And if at any time you want to resize that window, just hover over it and you've got controls that display. The question panel, I've just highlighted that. Basically, you just type in your question. Note, though, that you will only see your own question in that question dialog. We get to see everything. The slides viewer is what is front and center on your screen, and that's where everything will be taking place today. Over on the right, you've got the resources panel, where we've put a few links on there. And remember to register for episode 3, which will be focused on content intelligence. And over there as well, you can always request a demo. If you need help with any of the controls, take a look at the bottom. You've got a panel with icons on there, and there's a help icon in there as well that you can click to get help with On24. That's only for the On24 panel. Today, we're in episode 2 of our 5-part series of Preparing for AI in Content Development and Management. And here you'll be speaking throughout the series. You get to speak with product chiefs, our leadership, and product owners about what we here at MadCap Software are doing to help you implement your AI strategy intelligently. If you've not started preparing for AI, you want to get started. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. Each of these episodes focuses on one or more prongs of our approach, and that's to do with content access and so on. Today, we are focusing on content access. What does that mean? Stay tuned to find out. I'm going to hand over to Anthony now, who is going to start things going. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Deepa, for the wonderful introduction. Welcome everybody. We appreciate you taking the time away from your busy work schedules to join us on today's webinar. As Deepa mentioned, this is episode 2, where we're going to be talking about content access. For those of you who didn't join us for part 1, which is really just the kickoff in that first webinar, we just shared really what MadCap's vision is around AI and how AI will impact the future of work through what we broke down into 3 pillars: content access, content assistance, and content intelligence. So look, we developed the strategy in the context of how content and data relate to business outcomes. Because at the end of the day, if your content isn't effective, if the data surrounding your content and the people who consume it aren't able to access that and get the use out of it, then neither are we as a company. So we cannot wake up like one morning and decide, hey, let's do AI, right? So we wanted to think about AI as not just one thing, but as a collection of powerful tools that when connected to proprietary content correctly and part of a more comprehensive strategy, that you can move mountains. You can use AI to increase efficiency and productivity. So the 3 pillars, just to recap, was content assistance, and that's really the assistance in content creation. How can you keep up with product release cycles and reduce time to market? What are some ways to speed up the authoring process and allow your writers to focus on user experience? And which AI solutions are the right fit for that? The second pillar, content intelligence, was really creating insights into the content that you have. How are your customers finding and interacting with your content? Do you have the coverage you need? And what are the most ripe and ready parts of your content that AI can impact? And then today's topic, really what we're going to be talking about, is content access, right? And we started with content access because that's probably, for us, the most exciting, really. That's about providing content as a service, so it can be accessed by many different platforms, right? The ability to deliver content anywhere it's needed and still being able to manage and maintain that content to ensure that it's accurate and up to date. And it's all about providing data to AI, right? AI is only as good as the data that you're going to feed it. And the capabilities that AI provides in this area, actually in content access, is super exciting for us. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Jim Washbush, and he's going to share the details around content access and really the exciting things that we want to share with you today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Washbush with Xyleme, MadCap Xyleme, the product team here. I'm excited to get the chance to talk with you guys. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. Super exciting time in the industry, super fun time to be part of tech. I do want to, before we get into it, I want to make sure that we've grounded ourselves in what matters most, which is to improve job performance, right? So MadCap companies and products, we've been doing this for years. We've been empowering people and organizations for a very long time. Our applications put learning and technical content together under one roof, which provides consumers with access to the information and the knowledge they need on the job, in the flow of work, when and where they need it. And yes, AI plays a role in how we do that. AI can absolutely unlock the power of people. However, AI can be a bright, shiny distraction. I lost myself in a rabbit hole for 3 hours yesterday reading about LangChain. So our advice is we want you to think about AI not as a thing. We want you to think of it as a collection of powerful tools that when connected with inside of a comprehensive strategy, we can do amazing things, which includes increasing the efficiency and productivity of our teams, right? So I'll say it now and maybe 37 other times. We want you to think about your content as data. We want you to imagine how AI, when connected to your proprietary content, can do amazing things. So let's begin with the end in mind, which is whether you're authoring technical documentation, if you're writing training materials, our job is really about connecting people to content, right? It's not a novel concept. At MadCap, especially here at Xyleme, we've been talking about this for years. Fundamentally, the need has not changed. What has changed is the landscape. So as content providers, we've got to continually adapt to the change in the landscape. We've got to upgrade our technology to support our consumers, right? AI can connect people to the content they need when and where they need it. But here's the thing, only if your content is properly managed and readily accessible to AI, right? I don't know how long you all have been at this. I've been at it a long time. I remember the early days of technical documentation with PageMaker. I remember when training moved online. And we all about lost our minds with that really awesome technology. You know what? AI is just the next evolution. So we always have to be cognizant of the user experience because fundamentally our content doesn't have any meaning until it's put to use to solve a business problem. All right? AI has the power to connect people to exactly the content that they need, anticipate the format they need, whether it's a procedure or a concept or troubleshooting steps, training course, and even anticipate what that person might be looking for, right? This ability increases productivity, improves problem solving, and reduces costly errors. Here's the thing. We've said twice, probably several more times, and we'll drive two things home with you. One is AI is only as good as the data you give it, and you need to think about your content as data. AI cannot operate without data in the pipeline. So we encourage you to adapt the mindset that your content is data. So if I roll back a minute and I redefine what our jobs are, it is connecting people and systems to content and data. So I'll illustrate that point with what I think is a familiar reference, right? The recommendation engine. Whether it's Netflix or Shopify or Pandora, your experience consuming content is from these systems is driven by the data that service knows about you. The movies you've watched, the books you've read, the things that you like, things you don't like, right? The engine, the AI, presents you with a new movie or a book you might enjoy. So if you think about it, the information is just data associated with you and the activities that you've engaged in. So is it really so much of a leap to replace movies and music with training courses, job aids, and user manuals? No, we don't think so. So an AI-powered engine, only works if the content is well described, because the old adage is true: better data in equals better data out. Xylem Syndicate, which we'll talk about for most of our time here, gives you this. Syndicate plus dedicated data gives you more powerful AI. All right, so let's talk about how that gets done. As AI is only as powerful as the data it has, here's a few things that you can do to improve your data and in turn improve AI's ability to use it. Right? AI models can ingest content or can ingest data in all sorts of different formats, from text files to audio to structured content like XML or markup. Pieces of advice: chunk your content into smaller, reasonable pieces. Take that 500-page user guide and break it down into chapters. The smaller the chunks, the better AI can interpret those chunks to deliver back answers to questions asked, right? And or generate new content. Tag your content with descriptive information, right? This is metadata. Metadata is typically it's information that's used more by systems than actual humans, and it helps systems to better understand those chunks, right? Things like format or duration, audience or subject matter. Tags provide contextual clues that can improve AI's ability to match people to content, because it provides contextual clues for those engines to better understand the semantics of a piece of content. So Syndicate allows adding and managing that metadata all in place, so that metadata flows downstream with that content into the content delivery systems and other applications that might be in your ecosystem. Right? Another takeaway: content is the words in the. I think of content as the words in the pictures. I think about data as the structure of that content and the metadata around it that helps describe it better. So we also encourage you to organize those chunks into some meaningful strategy, right? Whether that's by subject area or by business unit or by role, right? Having a folder of sort of arbitrary things is not as useful as having a directory of really clean folders with a well thought out strategy representing a well-described set of things. Things being assets, documents, files, however you want to describe them, right? Back to that recommendation engine from a minute ago, tags, organization, chunked content dramatically helps AI by improving the quality of the data. Better data in equals better recommendations. Because AI needs data in your content as fuel, providing access to content becomes a foundational strategic capability. It's a really fancy way of saying, as an organization, you need this. You need this under your feet. Syndicate allows you to deliver your content as a service by becoming a central hub for learning and content ecosystem. Right? It feeds content to other tools and applications. That includes AI-powered tools such as a chatbot, and it can answer some questions for you. It could be a knowledge base that AI uses to retrieve content for, I don't know, your support staff when they're working tickets. Maybe it's a CRM solution. Maybe it's a digital coach or a learning management system. The list of possibilities is really endless. But imagine a world where data and content can easily flow between these systems, right? How awesome would it be if you could future-proof your architecture so you can swap these tools in and out, yet Syndicate remains that central hub, holding your content, holding your library, and being the orchestrator of data and content outward. So I'm going to take a pause here and a sip before I get into, hopefully your head's not spinning. But if they are, it's becoming clear that implementing AI tools, it requires a lot of work. There's an awful lot of planning and thought and forecasting that goes into implementing any sort of AI strategy or AI tool, because we need to do our best to get it right out of the gate. So AI gets an awful lot of attention. Automation is still the powerhouse, right? Automation platforms like Workato or MuleSoft, these drive productivity through triggers and events supported by APIs that allow content to be directed when and where it's needed. Right? So we'll talk a lot about integration. We'll talk a lot about automations and the relationship with AI as we get further into the presentation. But knowing this, you need to connect the applications that generate, collect, and share content along with its associated data. Long gone are the days of I have 2 tools in my ecosystem or 3 tools. Now we see organizations with dozens of tools, each tool being a very, very specific or an expert in one capacity or another. So I'll show you a couple of integrations, or I'll tell you a couple of stories about integrations in a minute or two to illustrate what I'm talking about. But for now, here's some important considerations for you to make as either you continue or begin your AI strategy. Right? Do your applications have robust API coverage? Right? You've got to have APIs, which is a way for systems and applications to talk to one another. Can't expect data to flow in and out of systems without them. Right? Are you capturing metadata that can be shared with downstream systems? Do you have support for workflow automation, and can you react to real-time events happening in your systems? And can your infrastructure support AI such as a RAG system? We'll talk about RAG in a lot in just a couple of minutes. Well-organized and managed content it's just the bedrock of any content strategy. This is especially true when AI is included. Right? You cannot serve useful content and data to AI, or honestly anywhere else for that matter, without that as a foundation. So if you're out there and you've got a content solution that checks a few of these boxes, single source of truth, metadata access control, and you're working on a content management strategy, that's awesome, super cool. If not, you're still okay. Right? Now's the time to get started, because if you wait, it's going to be a lot harder and harder to catch up. So Syndicate checks a few of those boxes outright. And what I mean by that is there are features within the Syndicate application, I'm calling those in tool, that inherently do some pretty awesome stuff. And after that, I'll actually contrast this. But Syndicate value to AI in tool is summarization. We use natural language generation, NLG tools, to create summaries from large bodies of content. Right? We have semantic search, which is based on NLG, again, natural language generation. Semantic search, well, I'll talk about that when we talk about RAG, but semantic search is my ability to go find content, not on some exact text match, but because the content I'm looking for, it sounds like and talks about, feels like it talks about what I'm asking. Semantic analysis, inventory content based on subject matter, difficulty level, etc. I can't tell you. I ran a large training organization, actually 2 in my history, and I can't tell you how many times I would be asked by the business, how much sales content do we have? How much content do we have for our branch staff? And I don't know. I got a spreadsheet. I'm managing all that on a spreadsheet. Right? That's impossible. So that's impossible in this day and age when content is just proliferated. So being able to have tools that can help me understand what my inventory is and help me as a business leader manage all of that and understand what I have and what I don't have. Super powerful. Metadata generation. Right? Automatically apply metadata for new content uploads. Wouldn't it be awesome at the time content was ingested, that you had a set of really smart agents that would read it and say, huh, you know what? This is system training. This is sales training. This is a how-to guide on this screen on this part of my software application. That's awesome. Being able to tag it appropriately. Tagging makes the world go round. However, manual tagging and asking humans to do that work is going to lead to problems. Last bullet to be included here is identifying duplicate content and consolidate or remove redundant files. How many times do we reinvent the wheel instead of figuring out, do I already have something on that particular subject that if I just change the industry, or I just change the role, or I just change the version of software that it was talking about, that I could save myself a whole bunch of time and money, right? These are tools that have become, these are capabilities that will become inherent to Syndicate as a product. I denoted those with the asterisks there. We have a couple that are actually available today in MadCap Xylem. And we have a couple that are actually in feature development. Spoiler alert, semantic analysis and a vector database are next up. I'll get to those in a minute. By the way, I get excited when I talk about work. Sometimes I talk too fast, so I will try to maintain myself. So listen, no single tool can be all things to all people. It's impossible. So sometimes tools can indirectly support capabilities in other workflows or systems. So let me try to explain. There are capabilities or features, if you will, in Syndicate that it doesn't do itself. Right? I just went through the ones that were in tool. These are things that are tangentially related. Right? So on the left side, Syndicate can be an input to external tools, especially in the context of AI, right? Because Syndicate is a data source for AI, we can store content in a way that can be consumed by humans and machines. Another one of the take-home messages is content is data, content is available for humans, and content needs to be available to machines. We've got a set of functionality for sharing content. We've got retrieval mechanisms, which would be the ability to search for content, conduct queries of our databases. We can expose analytic data, which is consumer interactions with content. So if we think about content again, like it's the words and the pictures, it goes out in some published format and it gets consumed, but there's all sorts of other ancillary information that comes with that. Who built it? Where was it built? How long did it take? How much money did I spend on it? What groups are consuming it? Are people finding it or not? If they're not finding it, what are they doing? That interaction data is gold, as it helps you better manage your ability to create and distribute content. In fact, that small tangent I just went off on is content intelligence. That's what we'll talk about actually next month. Spoiler alert. So because Syndicate can be that data source for AI, we'll move to the right-hand side, which is you can build some custom AI tools that do some amazing things. And analyze, forecast, manage versions, detect plagiarism, ensure originality, ensure that the compliance with industry regulations and standards. Because we are dealing in proprietary content, we cannot have a large language model guess. We can't have a chatbot return bad or incorrect information. Either it's going to get us sued or somebody's going to get hurt. Right? We can also detect, or you guys can also detect and manage outdated or unused content, and to maintain an efficient repository in your maintenance. You have the inventory example I gave a minute ago. Having a clean house, right? These all go hand in hand. Some direct, some indirect. So yeah, sounds great, Jim. That was like, 19 minutes of theory. So it doesn't really matter until the rubber hits the road, and you can, make me believe you. So let me try to do that. Let's go into what I call story time. I want to talk about two real world examples. In both cases, these are Xylem Syndicate being used by our customers in an integration with the downstream system. First one comes from a customer, and this will sound familiar to several hundred of you out there. It comes from a customer. They use SharePoint as a web portal for their staff. So they're creating content in all sorts of different tools. Microsoft Office and InDesign and even MadCap. And those files are getting stored in SharePoint. So the main challenge is that when you build content in multiple tools and it's being ingested from multiple places, there's no single source of truth for that content. And, let's just be honest, managing content in SharePoint can be pretty challenging. So what we did is we implemented Syndicate. We moved all the content files over. We did everything I just told you that was a good idea to do. We tagged it, we organized them, and then we built an integration so that SharePoint could continue to be the portal used by the staff, but that content resides entirely in Syndicate, right? The solution relies on a couple of components. One being Xylem's platform event system, which is it's a communication tool that we have that can proactively notify downstream systems or an integration whenever a particular action or event happens in our systems. APIs, whether it's Syndicate involved or not, you've got to have APIs to connect systems. That's just how the world works. So here we had to have Syndicate APIs because we needed that integration to be able to query or get content from Syndicate. And then we also had to have SharePoint APIs because we need that integration to turn around and take the information it got from Syndicate and post that content into SharePoint. So here's a view of that web portal. Yeah, it's just a list in SharePoint. Each row corresponds directly to a document residing in Xylem Syndicate. So each asset has a title, it has a format, has a description, has a publisher, and it's got a link. It's got a link to view the user to view the content. So yeah, okay, cool. At face value, not super exciting. Here's what is really awesome, is we have an integration that's running under the hood that maintains this list. So whenever a document is added to Syndicate or modified or archived, the integration reacts to those events and it maintains this, it updates this list in SharePoint. All that's done in real time. So Syndicate is the source of truth and data, and the integration facilitates the flow of content between the systems. Wonderful, Jim, but that doesn't have anything to do with AI yet. And that's true. I'll get there in a second. Here's the point. Here's the next point I want to make in terms of strategy and you preparing yourselves to go to venture down the AI path. Earlier I made a point that well-defined content and automation combined can do amazing things. Well, in this example, the integration is leveraging not just the content in Syndicate, not just the PDF, the HTML, the words and the pictures, right? It's also leveraging the metadata associated with it. So the title, the format, classifications, activation date, these are ingredients that let that integration do what it needs to do. In the end, the value to this particular customer was they were able to dramatically improve their ability to control their content, especially as new versions were added or changes were made. So the value is not going to be realized without having all that content well-defined and organized in a single source of truth, right? Well-organized, tagged, single source of truth. Those are pieces of advice. This is that advice put into motion in the real world. No, it didn't talk about AI, but this story will. So our second example does have an AI context. And actually, this is going to let us geek out a little bit. I promise to not go too deep down the rabbit hole. But in this case, it's a current customer who they're trying to extend their solution with Syndicate. They already deliver content from a couple of different distribution points, including they use in-app help, contextual help inside their software. And they also have a web application, a knowledge base that's used by their help desk when that staff is looking for information to help them solve a problem or work a ticket, right? So Syndicate serves as the source of truth for all that content. And yeah, there's an integration that's running and maintaining the linkages between Syndicate and those distribution points, in-app help and the knowledge base. So what they're trying to do now is improve the efficiency of their tech staff, their tech support staff, guys working the desk. Because that gang has got to be able to look up information quickly. They got to find what they need, and they have to trust the results. whenever they're researching or working a support ticket. So it's really early on in the project, but the plan is to build a RAG system. So that's retrieval augmented generation. It's a pretty super popular buzzword in this space. We'll get into some more definition shortly, but the idea is to build that RAG and incorporate their content, their proprietary content that's stored in Syndicate. So the massively fascinating point in the story is that they can distribute their content in both human and system consumptions, right? So HTML, PDFs going out to the help desk and going into the in-app help, and also just data being able to feed the RAG as a chatbot is trying to generate, as the RAG is trying to generate an answer to a question being asked. So the components here is loosely the ability to provide the same content in different formats. I'll reference that in a moment. And then, of course, we have to have the APIs, particularly on the Syndicate side, so that the RAG can search for content in the Syndicate, right? And then having access to a large language model, I'll say it here and I'll say it again in a minute, is a RAG cannot exist by itself. It has to work in conjunction with an LLM. We'll talk about why in a moment. So we know that AI models can ingest, or well, I should say tools, AI tools can ingest data in various formats, whether that's a text file or video or something structured data like XML or HTML. Sometimes one format is preferred over another. For example, like flat text, here we've got flat text versus markup language. So there's benefits to using one over the other under certain conditions. So we put this in here. Because this is what we did. Because when we went out at Xylem and started thinking about what tools we needed, what tech we needed, what kind of infrastructure we were going to build. It matters. The tools that we want matter. So we have to think about what's the job that I need to get done? What's the AI tool that could potentially help me there? And then what data does that tool need in order to do its job? And what format of that data does that tool need in order to do its job? So thinking through all of that helps us understand what we may have to do with our data in order to leverage AI and help us understand when we go shopping, what's the right tech we need to add to our stack. So back to our story, customers using MadCap to author their content, and they're producing the same content. I'll say publishing. We use the word publishing in my world. We publish content into Xylem Syndicate in different formats. So this is just a screenshot of a folder from Syndicate. It's not super exciting. It's just a folder that shows the same content. This is the point to write down and take home to mom was, we have the same content existing in 3 different formats in the system. HTML and PDF, which would be for my downstream distribution systems for humans. And then I can also include XML. The fact that XML is in here isn't necessary for this particular story, but it does illustrate the point that I can have sort of raw data here that can then be exposed to downstream systems, can be transformed into other formats from here. The metadata could be sucked out of here and fed into downstream systems. Depends on what your ecosystem is and what you're trying to accomplish. The takeaway is malleability and flexibility by having data existing in multiple formats. I'll take let me see if I need to break for some questions. One moment. I realize that I have been going on and on. No. Okay. So RAG, retrieval augment generation. Content access, kind of the point of our conversation today, along with content management and proprietary information, those things come together pretty seamlessly under what's called retrieval augment generation or RAG. Those of us who play in a world of proprietary content, we're writing documentation for our own systems. If that stuff's not on the web, or not on in the general internet, and or I want to control the use of that, RAG becomes sort of the end game. So suffice it to say, I think in the documentation and even in the training space, corporate learning space, RAG is sort of the thing that organizations are chasing, especially at least the customers that I talk to, in and out every week. I've mentioned RAG a couple times, haven't really explained what it is or why it matters in the world of creating and managing your proprietary content. So there's a lot of analogies out in the world of RAG, some silly, some not. I like this one. So think of RAG as a highly skilled chef. Right, the chef has got access to this massive pantry stocked with ingredients from all over the world. That's the general internet, right? So when you request a specific dish, chef's going to quickly find the necessary ingredients from that pantry. But what makes chef unique is that they have access to a locked cupboard containing exclusive ingredients that belong only to your organization, right? That's your proprietary content. So if you order up a dish that requires these special ingredients, chef's going to combine them with the general ones from the pantry to create exactly what you need. So the RAG model delivers the most accurate and relevant result at the RAG system, delivers accurate and relevant results using publicly available information and your organization's unique content. Now, how you choose to do that is actually largely up to you. And I'll elaborate on that strategy in a minute. I actually want to open up the hood and talk about RAG a little deeper. But when it comes to RAG, access to that locked cupboard in our chef example, that's restricted, right? Keeping everything secure within the company. It doesn't need to be exposed to the general internet. It doesn't need to be exposed to the large LLMs out in the world, and it doesn't need to be used to train those things. That's under your control. So with each new request, the idea is the chef's going to learn more about what's helpful and be able to find the right information faster. Over time, chef becomes more efficient and more effective. I said we'd geek out a little bit. Well, here it comes. And let's say it this way. The reason that we wanted to add this was almost to do two things: demystify some of these acronyms and technical jargon, but also try and boil things down to a level of understanding that you don't need to be a technical person. You don't need to be a developer to grasp the main concepts here. So inside there's a ton going on inside of a RAG or inside of a RAG system. But if we focus on the main components, it really kind of looks like this. On the left, we've got Syndicate as the single source of truth. It doesn't need to be. Of course, I like to talk about Syndicate. It's one of my adopted children. So that is our single source of truth. It's full of content. It's got my HTML in it. It's got my SCORM courses. It's got my PDFs. And to be honest, it doesn't matter where that source content came from. It doesn't have to come from a MadCap authoring tool. It can come from anywhere. Syndicate doesn't care. However, it certainly helps to come from MadCap because it's what we do. We have an ability to easily transform the same content and publish it into different formats, which we looked at a minute ago. The same content in HTML, PDF, and XML. We can do that in one step. So the idea is we want to implement a chatbot, right, with RAG, and that support staff can use when they're researching, answering questions on the things that they're working on, a case that they're working on. So the staff member types at the top of the screen, staff member types a question to the chatbot. How do I change a customer's mailing address? And the RAG basically has two jobs. The first is to retrieve the results from Syndicate or any other vector store. For us, it's Syndicate. That's the job of the retriever, which is a part of RAG. You learn to read about RAG, you're going to hear about retriever. So in our diagram, that's step one. The retriever is going to use the Syndicate Search API to query Syndicate's vector database. Vector database, another technical term. For our purposes today, vector database just means that we are storing data in Syndicate based on its semantic meaning. Right? So what does that content talk about? I don't care about the specific words, but what is the meaning that is being conveyed, right? So our search for the retriever should find content that's semantically related to our question. So when I send it, when the retriever sends, how do I change a customer's mailing address to Syndicate, Syndicate's going to come back and say, hey, here you go. Here's all the stuff that I think relates to the question that you asked me. This is not a good old-fashioned text match. In reality, what's happening is that the RAG retriever is just asking Syndicate to get the top hits, right? Top hit. We know that we run searches in systems all the time. You get a bunch of stuff. The stuff at the top you expect to be more accurate. Same thing here. Syndicate is going to return to the retriever the top hits based on the question that you've been asked and based on the semantic meaning of any content that Syndicate has that might be related to it. So I'll go back to the presence of having alternate file types or additional, the same content in multiple file formats. The presence of XML or the presence of HTML, that format for a particular piece of content can make this query more effective. It makes your hits, semantic hits for that query show up higher and higher in the list. All right? Because those things can add more semantic meaning. XML, XML being those first and foremost, can add semantic meaning to those queries and help improve the accuracy of the results. So now we're in step two. Syndicate says, hey, here you go, RAG. Here's all the content I have related to your question, which brings us to the second main job of RAG, which is to generate a response. This is where the LLM, the large language model, comes in, right? RAG cannot exist on its own. It's got to have an interaction, has to have interaction with an LLM. So what happens is the retriever forwards the results from Syndicate to the LLM, and it says, here's all the content, here's all the context necessary to create what I think is necessary to create an answer. Hey, generator, Mr. LLM, that's the job, is to go formulate and craft a well-written response. And we want the RAG, well, the RAG now allows that response to be as accurate as possible. And here's why. Because it's incorporating your proprietary content. In other words, the generator, the LLM, is generating the right answer. However, we control, and I'll speak to this in a second, you can control as you generate or as you configure your RAG, how much weight you want to give that generator's ability to create answers based on the general internet, and or only generate answers based on proprietary content, in this case coming from Syndicate. So, it's September 12th of 2024. We've all played with a chatbot at some point, right? At the end of the day, the answer that comes back is not a list of URLs or a list of file names. It's a well-written answer, hopefully a well-written answer, familiar in English. This is what LLMs do. They know language. They know how to construct sentences. So when I say, how do I change a customer's mailing address, this massive amount of amazing things happen. But at the end of the day, it comes back and says, hey, man, you want to change a customer's mailing address? Locate the customer record from the accounts page and do this, this, and this. Right? And I have a level of confidence because of how my RAG is weighted to only answer for my proprietary content that I own, I maintain, I make sure it's accurate, then I expect the answers to be accurate. And those answers that answer can also oftentimes include a list of sources which were the pieces of information that were used that had semantic meaning to the question that I used to answer it. I geeked out a little bit, sorry. Hopefully that's pretty clear of the idea that what a RAG is really doing is just asking for information and then it's turning to the LLM and saying, help me write the best answer, and being able to constrain that answer. So I'll mention, come back to constraint, but I want to do it by way of example. So as what do we do? We're creators of proprietary content. We've got to ensure that that is always accurate and current. We don't want to rely on the general internet to answer a question about an internal company procedure. That's a risk in using AI tools, Gemini or ChatGPT, Copilot, right? Those tools are trained using the World Wide Web. And yeah, no doubt, super powerful. But here's the big point: they don't know your proprietary content. They're not trained on it, and this can be problematic. So let me give you an example. I asked a popular model, doesn't matter which one. I asked a popular model a question: hey, how do I generate a shared link in Xylem Syndicate application? And it very confidently, brazenly confidently, and immediately returned an answer that is 100% absolutely wrong. So in the context of AI model, this is a hallucination. And hallucinations happen when a model generates information that generates an answer that seems plausible, but is incorrect or fabricated. Like, it's lying to me. It's not doing it on purpose. It's doing it because the model doesn't have enough relevant data, or the information that it has, it's misinterpreting. So in a RAG system, hallucinations can still happen, where the model can combine information inaccurately between, like, it'll mix up the information it got from the general internet, like our pantry and the chef analogy, mix that up with information it got from proprietary content, the special cupboard. And that can lead to a response that sounds really good. Like, this reads really good. It's just wrong, factually wrong. So there are risks, but RAG puts controls to reduce that risk or reduce that exposure to you. We can constrain responses to verified sources. So in my example, I can tell the RAG, hey, listen, telling the LLM, hey, when you go generate their answer, only use the sources that came from Syndicate. Only use the source that came from my proprietary content. I know it, I trust it, it's accurate. And that helps us to prioritize high quality, reliable data. And it lets you put the power of your proprietary content into an LLM without the need to train it. So here's the flip side of that, which would be asking the same question to an LLM, to a chatbot with RAG. So this time I actually used a RAG system that we've been experimenting with here at Xylem in our lab, and our RAG has access to proprietary content about Syndicate. It's got our user guides, it's got our training materials, job aids. All that stuff is not available on the public internet. So when I ask the question, how do I generate a shared link in Xylem Syndicate's application, it provides an accurate answer because we configured the RAG to restrict responses to only our proprietary documents, right? That was up to us. And when you do this, it's up to you. It's to we chose this because we know our content isn't exposed to the general internet. And I want the LLM to use, to do what it does best, understanding human language, write me a really nice answer, but base that answer exclusively on content I served it, my proprietary content. And in our case, we actually screenshot the bottom. Second screenshot is a list of the sources. Like, that's where that's the snippets that's the information that came back from the retriever when the RAG asked Syndicate, hey, how do I apply classifications to improve tagging my content? So constraints, yeah, I know what I just did. Constraints, we can constrain the response to our proprietary content, but we can take that one step further, which is, my earlier example, it gave me a right answer because it was trained on the right content. But if I don't have any content related to the question that was asked, I don't want an LLM making stuff up. That's not good for anybody. So I asked it, how do I train a dog to roll over? Right? I don't have, and there's no content in our, we don't really have proprietary content on how to train a dog. Wish we did, but we don't. So the RAG was configured to say, in this situation, I'm sorry, I don't have information about that. I can't answer your question. So we can control whether or not an answer is given, and we can control where it comes from, and we can control whether or not to just say, I don't know. That helps us reduce a whole bunch of stuff, risk and errors. So let me do a quick time check. Very good. So let me try and land the plane. MadCap strengthens your content ecosystem. It lets you combine content from various sources, lets you deliver the right content to the right people and systems. It lets you feed external applications with rich content and interaction data. And it lets you integrate business tools into your ecosystem. So we talked about, we were talking about AI tools and LMSs and knowledge bases. Well, what about productivity tools like Asana? What about project management tools to help manage the workflow of your content as it's flowing in and out of these systems? We can help you with that. It gives the best of both worlds. Select the tools that work for you. Your teams can select the tools that work best for them. You can centralize that content, the tracking and the access control and all that good stuff. I'll leave it. I guess I'll try to close on start to close on infrastructure. So again, we're trying to give advice and direction on how to get things done and what to think about. As AI continues to evolve, your architecture's got to let you easily swap those tools in and out. Tools are going to fail. Some are going to succeed. You're never going to know who the market leader is. It's a losing game to bet on it anyway. I would rather spend my money building an infrastructure that is future-proof, so I can move tools in and out based on whether they that's a performant tool or they just they just disappear. On the syndicate side, left side of the slide, we're in a pretty good place, right? We are a central content management system. We have robust API coverage. We do have content. Well, spoiler alert: Q4 we'll have our vector database, and we'll have our content vectors that we can expose to your tools. We have interaction data. Integration services, I talked a lot about integrations. If you have the tools, great. If you need to use ours or want us to help you with it, we can. On your side of the fence, your side, right? Do you have an AI team? Do you have a trusted vendor? Do you have a working knowledge in the AI space, right? Are you comfortable with RAG? Are you comfortable with the job of the retriever? Are you comfortable with large language models? Which is the right one to use for your needs? Are you going to be doing data analysis locally now that you can get all this rich, cool stuff coming out of Syndicate? You're going to build databases or warehouses or lakes, and you may find yourself needing to build custom vectors if the vectors that we have don't meet your needs. So again, thinking about prep and strategy, all of this foundational stuff, kind of, it's a lot of paperwork really, but having sound footing is you're in a much better place having very sound footing than not. So discussed integrations quite a bit. They play a really large role in content access, right? The topic of our talk today. And it's even more so, that's even more true when AI tools are involved. So we invite you to learn more, request a demonstration on our capabilities. You can do that from our website, xylem.com. We've got a dedicated page on integrations, what we do, how we do it, and we can help you sort that out as you need. Xylem recently introduced a feature called Sidekick. This will be on the AI side. Xylem's it's a powerful toolkit. It's extensible components that have what we call kicks, which gives you a combination of traditional tools and AI-powered tools. So you can choose from our ready-made kicks, or you can create your own using your own models. right? So we encourage you to explore this further, Sidekick further, request a demo. You can by visiting our website and read about that. And I think that I'm right on time. I'm gonna shut up now. I'm gonna turn it over to Anthony and have us bring it home.
Thanks a lot, Jim. I really appreciate it. Great demo, great overview. So where does this leave us, right? So as we've seen, as we all already know, AI is going to impact our industry, right? Tech docs, learning, and many systems are sprinting to catch up. So, we talked in our first webinar that we did a recent survey, found that 80% of organizations are confident they're going to leverage AI in some form or other in their tooling, but many of them actually have no idea where it actually will be implemented, right? So MadCap's goal for our AI with our customers is to make sure that all our customers are able to understand what's possible with AI and what it means for you specifically. How do you create solutions tailored for your business solutions? So, for example, with content access, making sure it's easy for you to integrate other AI tools, these other AI tools that are available, build your own LLMs, leverage your proprietary content, and get most out of the AI's capabilities around content access. Obviously, in our next webinar, where we're talking about content intelligence, right? I mentioned that before, and how do we use AI to help you create content? How do you keep pace with faster development cycles, to reduce time, increase efficiency? And then obviously content intelligence, right? That'll be the third pillar, which we'll be talking about using AI to ensure how do you ensure your consumers are finding the content that you're creating, but leveraging AI to do that. And so, with that said, I really appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed the webinar. I know there's a lot of questions. I don't know if we have time for some questions, Deepo, that we can help answer.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few interesting questions, and there'd be too many for us to answer here. Just a quick last word on, you said content intelligence. The last one in the series, or the last one but one, is content assistance. So we've got content access today, content intelligence is our next episode, and then content assistance, and then we do a roundup of all of them on our final episode. So taking a look at the questions, I mean, we've got some very interesting questions. A lot of them about Flare. Do you have any AI for MadCap Flare? We use Flare. We don't see any generative AI tool that pulls from Flare content. Can you give us a word about what we're doing in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually saw that throughout the talk track. There's a lot of Flare customers, central customers on here, and here we're talking a lot about Syndicate. So Flare already integrates with Syndicate, right? So if you haven't checked that out, that integration, I encourage you to check that out, because we do integrate with Syndicate on the Flare side. Even Flare standalone sites, you don't have to have central per se. So definitely encourage you to do that. And obviously a lot of our efforts are making sure that, Syndicate can integrate with all our tools, right? Flare, the central, XCS, ECMS, we're working on it daily. We're coming out with updates all the time to do that. So you can leverage AI to the extent that Syndicate we're talking about here on the Flare side, but you will require Syndicate to be able to do that. It's not really built in per se into the Flare application plan. The whole point is to integrate our tools and get the best bang for your buck in terms of the innovation that's happening on various fronts. So hopefully that answers that question, but certainly reach out to customer success or to your rep if you're an existing customer, and we're happy to set up those demos and actually walk you through that. We already have some customers that are doing that already with the Flare to Syndicate integration.
All right, and a very quick question for Jim. What kind of skills do users need to set up a scenario using Syndicate?
Setting up a scenario. Well, think of Syndicate as a fancy cloud storage. We have files and folders, and we have API access to those things. So I think when you think about a scenario is, well, what's my business challenge? What is it that I'm trying to do? Does the data that I need exist? Because if it does and I can see it, then I can use it to make good on a scenario. So it sounds like you're thinking about a use case and not sure where it fits. We can help you walk through those ideas.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So not very many skills, and it's quite easy to learn, actually. And I think we've got space for one very, very last question. Let me just quickly run through. Do you consider, and I'll let both of you talk to this one, and this is from someone who knows quite a lot about this topic. Do you consider Xylem Syndicate as a full-fledged headless and tailless source format agnostic of content delivery platform with out-of-the-box connectors and an API?
That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. The answer is headless. Yes. I mean, we think of us as a data store that has connectors. They are API based. We try to be agnostic in our APIs. So third-party systems can use those tools, use our APIs to query data, post data, etc. So yes, I do consider us mostly headless. I'd also consider us format agnostic in the context that I can put I can put content in whatever file format I want, and then use it and serve it downstream in terms of a delivery platform. So yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. We have run out of time. There's quite a few questions left over. We'll be sending those out with the recording link. So look out for that. If you don't see it in the next couple of days, make sure you check your spam box. Although we shouldn't be going into your spam, should we? Thanks a lot, Anthony, and thanks, Jim. And I look forward to seeing you all. Remember, you can register. Take a look on the right-hand side, resources. You can go directly to the AI portal, MadCap AI portal, find a little more about what we're doing, register for episode 3, and request a demo, obviously. Speak with you all next episode. Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy your day.
Appreciate it. Thank you.